All right, the lineup is back, and we have a special guest with us today. He's a Coronado native, but he and his family have been leading somewhat of a nomadic life in recent years, traveling to Bali, Sri Lanka, Tonga, Australia, and Europe. He is an expert surfer as well as a champion paddleboarder, winning the 40th Catalina Classic in 2015. And he's also a master shaper, working with iconic board builders like Channel Islands, Rusty, and Xanadu in the past. He started his own label, Mankind, in the mid-1990s, and he's partnered with Firewire Surfboards, where these days he's shaping for little-known underground surfer named Robert Kelly Slater. Ladies and gentlemen, with us today, San Diego's Dan Mann. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on the lineup.
No worries. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, first things first, where are we talking to you from today? I understood you're in the water, you got a fresh outer known shirt on. What's been going on for you today so far?
I'm in hot, humid Costa Rica. And
so
I
wonderful.
blew through one shirt, so I said I better switch it out. So yeah, Costa Rica in just south of Tamarindo area, northwest.
Oh, very cool. My family and I, we went to Nasara a few weeks ago just for like
Perfect.
summer. And we kind of caught it right at the start of the rainy season, but it only rained like a few nights, so it was kind of nice.
Yeah.
It wasn't too hot in plenty of ways.
Yeah, that's what we've been getting a lot. We just sprinkled a little bit my bike ride back from the beach just now, and it's been a pretty dry July for as far as I know. But yeah, it's still green and beautiful stuff.
That's wonderful. Is that an annual thing for you and your family? Do you spend a bit of time every year in Costa Rica?
No, well, I've been spending more and more time here. I have a little house here now. So
Wonderful.
I have a little hub here that I can operate out of, and it's close to the airport. So if I need to shoot back to San Diego, all my work stuff is mostly either online or in San Diego. So when I need to do actual boards and really get dirty, I just shoot home and bunch up the work and shoot back there for an organized strike mission. And then, but yeah, split the time.
I think you're living the dream if you're a surfer and your strike missions are actually back to like San Diego for work, where the rest of us, our strike missions are like, we go to Costa Rica or somewhere.
Yeah. No, I pitch myself every day. I have a really good setup in getting the commute part sorted so that the boards are stashed in the right places so that I don't always have to carry boards, and getting, like if I need to leave from from Costa Rica, getting that sorted out, where's the best airports, and getting all that sorted out makes it, it opened up a whole new little area of what's available to go strike out for. And yeah, no, I have a good setup though, for sure. I have a good setup in San Diego as well. And the key is to keep it extremely affordable so that I don't have much overhead. So.
Right. And as far as setups go, internet's working pretty good, which is handy because today's episode is going to drop during the window for the outer known Tahiti Pro presented by IC. We mentioned your underground team rider. It's actually Kelly Slater. He's a 11-time world champ. He's got a wild card into the event. Did you end up making Kelly some boards for this event? Because you guys have kind of a unique surfer-shaper relationship over there.
Yeah, no, he may have a couple. He usually has a couple stashed, but we didn't talk before the event, or before it was announced that he was going to be a part of it. And I'm assuming since he's operating out of Australia, they built a few there. And I haven't heard yet if how many or what is made up of my boards, my shapes, but we'll see.
We'll all find
Usually
out.
I don't ever know anyway. I'll make him stuff, and then until he shows up on the beach with it, I don't ever know.
Obviously, our working relationships with Kelly over our careers are very different, but I feel like that's the right approach to be like, I'll be pleasantly surprised if he's using my stuff, but I don't have any expectations because he's certainly like a citizen of the world in the way he operates.
Yeah, and as a shaper for him, it's like, hey man, I'm here to support you. He by him riding the boards and for as long as he has riding my boards, that's a huge feather in my cap. So I don't need to go hounding him and be another. That's the thing. Working with him for as long as I have now, it's been a little over 10 years, and pretty consistently, and seeing how many people want something from the guy around the world, it's just like, holy cow. So I don't want to be one of those guys, but also be a huge, asset if he needs me to jump in. We can build boards in a 2-day period. We can get them shipped around the world. So yeah, to be a nice little balance for him and easy.
Yeah, that sounds really similar to what I learned early on with him, where it's like, there's a working relationship, I'm gonna need stuff from him, but the more time, if every time I go to him with a request, it's demonstrably a good thing for him too, and it's a value add, then he'll probably keep responding to my phone calls as opposed to me just like one-way streeting, like I need this, I need that sort of thing. So
Yeah. I mean, just when you see him around and how many people are
oh man,
asking him for stuff, it's like, wow. So.
With the spotlight to Hopu, I'm curious, number one, whether you've been there or not. And then the second question to that is, when you're building boards for a specific wave, Chopu is obviously a really specific wave, how essential is the firsthand experience for you as a surfer to shape boards for a wave like that, or kind of any space? Or do you feel just as comfortable pulling kind of from your own experience at similar waves as well as kind of feedback from your team riders?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've never actually been to Tahiti. I've been to Rarotonga and Tonga, Cook Islands, those islands. But Tahiti, I haven't ever been. So, and you're right, it's such a specific wave. I mean, it's such an incredibly dynamic wave, and there are guys that want specific boards for that, team rider-y, but also just buddies who've been there a lot, and I've made them boards for it. But it's for like David, he just did real well in the U.S. Open, and that board is I think he's riding a 5.9 FRK, and Kelly's the same way in that they kind of make those designs that they really like, that feel really good under their feet. They make those span a way bigger window of waves than you'd think. So Kelly, I know with his pipe boards and boards we've done, I mean, he's surfed pipe a lot on boards that he also surfed in France. And, it's not always the case, especially pipe. He'll jump onto a longer, like a little bit more of a step up 6.6, 6.4 pretty quick in the game. But it's not totally unusual for him to be riding really small boards. And those are often his regular good boards that he knows really well. One less thing to think about, something that's just so automatic. His feet go right into the right spot. His wax is already set up, and those kinds of little tiny details.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's interesting to hear you talk about how, surfers like David and Kelly, and it probably like a growing amount of surfers now, they find the model and the aspects of that model that works for them, and then they might scale it up or scale it down or tweak it slightly, but like the bones of that model, they're like, I feel so comfortable on it, I could ride it in Huntington, I could ride it at pipe, whatever it is. And switching gears just a little bit, I'd imagine that having that kind of special sauce in your own models is really advantageous when you enter things like Stab in the Dark, and you featured pretty heavily in 2 of those this year, and I'll take them, I guess, in the order they came out. I'm not sure if it's the order they were filmed, but we can get to that in a minute. But first one was the big one, right? Stab in the Dark X 10. Kelly Slater, he's the 10th sort of test pilot for Stab in the Dark, which is their blind board test. It's really exciting, and you squared off, and your model squared off against the likes of Britt Merrick and Matt Biolis, Darren Hanley, Marcio Zuvi, John Pizell. What was, I guess, maybe talk us through, like, how did you get involved, like when Stab approached you about this, where you're like, oh, that's interesting, and then what was it like even kind of coming up with a model for someone like Kelly, knowing that you guys obviously have like a really successful working relationship already?
Yeah. So the first thing of like being a part of that was really interesting, because we all knew, unlike the other Stabs, this is something that people don't really get to drive home, is all of us shapers knew it was for Kelly. And that was a very controversial Stab, because he ended up not getting rid of his shaper's model. But hey, man, we all knew who it was for, so you can't say you didn't know who it was for. And Ethan's was, we didn't know who it was for. So just to give you an example there. But as far as like making him his board and how to decide was, I don't know how much other guys thought about it or anything, but my goal and my key was, in a lot of my operation systems, is to not think too much about it. Just imagine what I want him to feel. I know that it was going to be PU with a wood stringer, I know exactly how to glass it. My buddy Jojo in San Diego glassed it for us, and he has a Jojo Roper. He's a big wave guy, and he knows
amazing all around surfer Jojo Roper as well. Like,
Oh yeah. So he had the glass job dialed, and so I knew the whole plan, and so I knew what to make them dimensions wise. I knew where to put the fins, and the whole setup was there. And it was just a matter of executing on it, because there's a super short window. I had to build the boards in like 4 days.
Right.
Get them up to stab. So that was wild and funny and typical, But
how many boards do you build for something like that? Is it just the one, or you got like two just in case one goes sideways? Yeah. Okay.
2 identical. Yeah.
Identical. And then, interesting.
Yeah. And same with Ethan's was the same. Yeah. So it's so you had to make them exactly the same, and then I think we put a piece of tape or something when I dropped them off to indicate please use it. Have them surf this one.
Right.
Keep this one as the backup. And there's this like weird psychosis of a shaper that would think that they're exactly the same. They were glass exactly the same. The amount of detail is crazy, but this one feels a little better. So
that's really funny.
Bizarre, funny things like that. Yeah. So.
I remember watching it when it came out, and then leading up to this conversation, I rewatched a lot of it. That particular series again, pretty controversial. I remember at the time, and a lot of conspiracy theories going around. Kelly, notoriously competitive, is not immune to trickery of his own, and there was an interesting dynamic. And you and I have just met now, but like those other 5 shapers, like highly competitive with one another. They've been doing this for a long time. You kind of. It was almost like a Buddhist approach on the side, where it's like, it's all gravy. Like, this is a cool opportunity. And there was very little ego, if I say that, in terms of what I experienced from you. And I'm curious if you watched it when it came out and you noticed like, oh, there's a little bit of difference between these guys and I, or if you just kind of got the aftermath when it was finished airing.
Yeah. So no, when while I was watching it, I could see that not only did I look very differently and feel differently watching myself, but it was also designed to be very, here's these guys, they were shot in black and white. I was shot in color. And so it seemed like Stab was very deliberate about it. And I felt all the way throughout the whole process, filming and everything like that, I didn't mind all that. In fact, I was grateful for it because, first of all, I didn't have to fly in a hurry down to Australia to make the shooting. Right. But then, to be, it allowed me to be more just how I am. And I wasn't influenced by being in a different atmosphere with all this other input of those guys being around. So I could just be myself sitting in my workshop. I was right outside my shed and just kind of a very familiar place, and I could just speak more from the heart and more clearly and more authentically. And so I wasn't influenced. They had booze and they had music, and it was just like, holy hell, if I was wrapped up in that, I'd been like, probably wouldn't have said anything. But
right.
So then when it was aired, I was totally cool with it throughout the whole thing. And then I appreciate you thinking I was very zen about it, but I honestly, egoically, at the very end, I felt like pretty exposed because I felt like I came off as the goofy, implant from the corporate, warlords.
Right. I see what you're saying,
what's the fancy word for that? But yeah, it was very. It was a story, and they had the villain and they had the good guy and the bad guy and the Joker. And I felt like a little bit of the Joker. Right after it aired, I felt like a goon. And I was like, huh. And so I had to, I did have to get pretty Buddhist and Zen about like, okay, I am freaking out egoically because it was just such a public display of one part of me. And it was very difficult for me egoically in that competitive world because I'm pretty competitive as well. I just try to focus it and know where I can and can't influence that. My competitiveness needs to go in a very direct way. I've learned that, So when, I had to use that opportunity as a way to calm myself down and not freak out and not have it become something that I don't know, just not get too worked up over it.
Yeah, and like, you know, it's the internet. People like to get worked up to begin with. And like, I was talking to Sam McIntosh about this like pretty recently, and I was saying, you know, it felt like one of the codas to me as a fan of just the series and the stories of everything for Mankind, for the win with Kelly, was actually your performance in the Ethan Ewing series, which dropped like pretty quickly after the Kelly one, within like a few weeks, I think. And again, I'm unsure if the Ethan one was filmed before or after the Kelly one, but either way, throughout that Ethan series, which is just a person of one, was like my favorite one in terms of like, this is maybe the closest test pilot we're getting to like their very peak performance. I'm not saying Ethan's peaked, but like we're in that window of like, this might be the best this particular test pilot's ever going to surf. And it was just incredible. The waves were amazing. But, you know, throughout the series, both Taj Burrow, who was there as sort of a consigliere on the series, and Ethan were just praising the Dan Mann throughout the episodes. And you know, for me, it was like, again, I'm not sure if it was filmed before or after, but whatever the washout was of the Kelly one and what people thought, that to me felt like the ultimate validation, like in a lot of ways of your ability, you know, as far as high performance boards go. And I'm curious if you experienced anything similar on your side.
Yeah. So what I failed to say when I was answering about the Kelly thing is they showcased me in a certain light and didn't talk about the 30 years of making boards and what that whole part of that story. So I felt like it was a very narrow peek into what I've done with surfboards. And then to your point, when the Ethan one comes out, I get invited since the airing of Ethan's to tell that story more and opportunities like this. And so it all definitely has worked out great for me. And I'm very grateful for the whole thing, the whole series, and the ups and downs of it all, you know, like life itself, you know, it was very beneficial for me in the long run. But yeah, Kelly's was filmed before Ethan's. But the one really kind of tricky thing is, so I built Ethan's board. It got shipped out to him, or, you know, again, 2 boards. They were done filming and they knew the result from Ethan's whole episode, you know, whole series.
Sure, yeah.
They knew the result before Kelly's aired. So it was all done and in the box, but they didn't have, they hadn't aired, even though Kelly's was all done and edited, they hadn't aired it.
Yeah.
So Sam, you know, we did a little podcast about it where he's talking about, I had all this information and I couldn't say any of it, so I had to kind of be a dick to you, you know, sorry about that kind of a thing. And I was like, okay, well, then this all makes sense, you know, from a standpoint of like, and while I was waiting to hear the results from Ethan's, I'm like, he may know the results because I knew the timing better.
Sure, yeah.
I was aware of that part. I didn't know who it was, and I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that part. So I was like, well, maybe he's got some master plan, and he knew it would work out well for me, and it did. So yeah, it was a sweet deal.
That's awesome. Well, as we said, like, huge year for Dan Mann in 2026. We may or may not see Kelly with your boards underfoot there in Tahiti, and then 2 huge features with a big win in one of them for Stab in the Dark. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to dive a bit back into the genesis of Dan Mann. Don't go anywhere. When the greatest surfer of all time teams up with some of the best shapers in the world, like Dan Mann and Daniel Thompson, you don't just get another surfboard, you get the relentless pursuit of performance. You get Slater Designs. Every Slater Designs model is the result of years of collaboration between Kelly Slater and his shapers, combining Kelly's vision with world-class expertise in the design and engineering spaces. At Slater Designs, they are constantly refining outlines, rockers, rails, foils, and bottom contours to help surfers unlock more speed, control, and progression. Pair those designs with advanced construction methods and technologies like Ibolic 2.0 technology and helium, and you get models and surfboards that are lighter, stronger, more durable, and engineered to perform at the highest level. If you're looking for the pinnacle of performance, there's a Slater Design surfboard built to help you unlock your full potential. Additionally, you can complete that model with the perfect pairing of Slater Designs fins, traction, leashes, and other accessories. Explore the complete collection from Slater Designs and Firewire Surfboards at firewiresurfboards.com, and we will see you in the lineup. All right, welcome back to the lineup. I'm Dave Prodan here with board builder Dan Mann. First question for this segment, Dan, you touched on in the opening one was, I think one that a lot of our listeners have, which is, how did you get started in shaping?
So I was, it was 1996, so I was probably 24. I was 23, and I was finishing up school, and I was awful at school, hated school, knew I didn't want to do that anymore. But yeah, I finished up at San Diego State and was wondering what I was going to do. I always wanted to own my own business, and had been surfing a lot. At the time, I was surfing for Rusty Preisendorfer, and that was peak Rusty. Rusty was just huge, and so, especially for me, it was just such a iconic brand and iconic group of people. The shapers were hardcore, top hand shapers, Terry Goldsmith and Rick Hammond, Hoy Runnels, and all these guys that were just not only really incredible craftsmen that Rusty trusted, but also just cool. And I got to know them. And another buddy of mine, Stu Kenson, was he made most of my boards. He was shaping under the Rusty label for part of that time as well. And just being around it all the time and watching boards be built and watching shaping happen, like seeing a board go from a blank. Blanks were a little more crude back then, too, I would say. And so the amount of shaping that would go on was insane, from the blank to the finished shape. Plus, you get to see the whole process by hand. So I had this idea of wanting to do my own business. My dad was, owned his own restaurants. So he was, self-employed, I guess, or
sure,
entrepreneur now. But back then it was just self-employed. I didn't want to work for anybody, basically. And so it just worked out. All those things kind of came together. And like you can now, back then especially, you could start with almost nothing. You could buy a planer for $100 and scavenge some tools together, some hand blocks for blocking out boards and shaping the actual contours and everything like that, where you could make. And you just needed a room. And so it all just came together really easily for a very inexpensive startup. I could sucker friends into ordering boards, and I went through probably 20 or 30 different friends, guys wanting boards, and a couple of them came back. And then next thing I know, I'm making 60, 70, 80, 100 boards. And then the opportunity to buy a glass shop, it got real clear that I needed to control the manufacturing all the way, because one of my shoe-ins for being able to get into the greater market and to get better surfers on my boards was to just have quick turnaround and control the process of it. You can do a board for someone like Kelly. Everyone will jump in and make crazy things happen and build a board in a day or two. But normally production's a 2-3 week thing, and you want to have it be fluid and anticipation and have it all work. But I needed to know that when I told a customer that it's going to be 4 weeks, that I would hit that date. And a huge part of being able to hit that date was owning the glass shop, or at least doing the glass work. I sucked at glassing. I still am terrible at it, but I realized I could. This guy was where I was getting my boards glass was wanting out of the business, so I was able to take over his business for almost nothing. And then that's when building surfboards. That was in 2001. Became my whole thing. I raised my family from there on out making surfboards, and it was all gas, hardcore for the last 25 years right now. So yeah, it was August 10th.
One thing I've noticed, Dan, I'm 43. We're not too far apart in age. Like surfers of maybe an older generation, surfers like yourself, it felt like there was a lot more interest across the board between the surfers and their shapers. So many of them, either built their own boards as they were pro surfers or ended up, becoming shapers down the track. You mentioned some of those hardcore shapers that you were exposed to being a team rider at Rusty. And then in the same track, owning a glass house, you're getting business from different shapers as well. And you're getting exposed to different designs. And I'm curious, could you talk to us a little bit about sitting at that nexus point, in both situations, and how, getting exposed to those different things informed your own kind of theory of board design?
Yeah, that's a cool thing because the more information we have, the better in so many ways. As surfers, like I asked Ethan, I'm all, what was it like riding 12 different shapers boards for in such a short compressed amount of time without the pressure of a contest or anything, and you could just actually really go out and test stuff. And he's very positive feedback from him for having to feel that many different boards, and all those boards were relatively close to what he would ride normally anyway, but it was still a huge difference and break out of the box from what he's always riding with DH and what they have probably really refined in terms of what he's predictability and used to. And then I think old school guys would experiment more and have different other shapers come in and stuff and be more involved. I think that's true primarily, especially the generation right ahead of mine. You got Jerry Lopez making his own boards, and Kern was definitely involved, as still is, with his boards. And so you're right about that. Kelly obviously is. So I surfed a lot of different boards. I rode a lot of longboards, but my main interest was high performance shortboards. So I got to see and feel a lot of those kinds of things. And then at the glass shop, to your point, handling surfboards shaped by the best shapers, Al Merrick and Rusty Preisendorfer, Xanadu, all those guys, and feeling how different their boards were, how different their models were from each other as they would offer out to shops. They would make this model, that model, that model. Their lineup, Xanadu had some crazy ones, the squid and different ones, but Rusty would stick to a formula that was pretty, tried and true. Merrick was, but Rusty would mess around with fins like C5, and Merrick would stick to a thruster. It was the thruster fin placement. It was very systematic and organized and clean and reproducible. So just as a shaper, to be able to not only handle and physically feel perfect boards or imperfect boards, whatever it may be, and to also be aware and exposed to all their different types of designs and shapes and the operations, like seeing their operations as a guy trying to be able to make enough money to support my family.
Right.
There's so much in the books. There's so much in the distribution, sales, and marketing, and seeing how all that could work or not work well, and how much it would cost, and then the other kind of goocher that's sitting out there in the world that no one really talks about is how much it costs a brand to support a high level team rider. Man, it's so much money. So understanding all those things and how they work together.
I'm curious to get your response to this one, because you bring up something that I wonder about a lot, right? Because, if you think of the act of board design and shaping and working by yourself, working with tools, it's not 100% of the time, but it sort of lends itself to the introverted mind, people that like to kind of focus in on particular tasks that, maybe you're not, the most extroverted, most social, but then all the other stuff like sales, marketing, building a business is more kind of like extroverted. And then I guess recently I've heard of this new one. It's called like the outrovert, which is like you're naturally an introvert, but when you have to be, you can kind of flex these extroverted muscles. What's your take on that, especially kind of coming from your position of like world-class board designer, but also someone that has to manage a business? What have you been more comfortable kind of doing?
Definitely closing the door and turning up music super loud and banging out boards. Yeah, if I could do that, that'd be great. But a buddy of mine, Chris, said, "Hey, listen, just listen to me, and I'll get you. You got to learn how to speak on the microphone and stand in front of a camera, because it'll help you so much." And he was right. So, but I don't think I've said this before, but if you're gonna make surfboards and you're gonna try to survive in a Southern California and put food on the table for a family, you're going to need to wear a lot of hats.
Right.
And so you're going to need to be at least extremely informed. I think it being involved with surfboards at all, it's such a fine margin and such a huge opportunity for falling off the cliff or taking your eye off the prize for a second And next thing you know, the competition comes in and swarms and takes your spot. So I think you have to be very keenly aware of the landscape of what you're dealing with in any business. Business is tricky and very complex, but surfboards especially, because I'm the guy who started my business, and all I really want to do is the actual making of the surfboard part. But yeah, so it's a really funny thing. But it's also, I think, as a person, I've gotten, I think I'm more well-rounded and happier by being forced to learn new things, and just kind of stretch the nervous system a little bit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. With the information age, everyone kind of has access to everything, right? And you could argue the internet's sort of flattened, whether it's access to board design or theories or even stuff like that. But for someone like yourself that's been shaping for 3 decades, and it felt like this when I was at Rip Curl Surf Center, working retail back in the late 90s, early 2000s, is the boards even from different parts of California would be very different, and and it felt like they had their own identities because they were primarily built for the waves around there, and we would get boards from the Gold Coast that were like, how the hell is this board going to work at lower trestles, like kind of thing, As far as like coming from Coronado and San Diego, you mentioned some of the other shapers like Rusty, SK, Xanadu, early in the 90s or mid 90s and kind of early 2000s, from your shaping perspective, what was, I guess, like the San Diego approach to building high performance boards? Like, what were the things that you guys focused on at that time?
That's a really cool question. I love the history of it. And I think especially then, San Diego is really a pretty solid hub. I mean, it was coming off of GNS, Canyon, you got Linden up there, you got all kinds of, San Diego was a hub. And I think there's a lot of electricity and cross-pollination for healthy competitiveness that can come from a situation like that. And there's a lot of actual manufacturing of the whole process going on there. So generally speaking, other than even with blacks, actually, there's less rocker. I mean, that's such a dumb, simple, oversimplified thing, but generally speaking, like what you're talking about, if you take a JS in 2003, say, and you need to make it for San Diego, I would say you'd probably want to drop the rocker, add a little bit of width, keep the rail the same, but add a little thickness, and kind of take the plan shape and just kind of relax it a little bit and not have it be such a high sprung, tight pocket kind of a craft, and even with so around San Diego, we have Mexico, which then you're talking about proper barrel slabby waves, Northern Baja. But most people are thinking of like blacks or, maybe big rock, but you got to penetrate the crowd control there. So good luck with that. But so there's, I'd say, generally speaking, more of relaxed profiles. And I also think that this is something I've always really, as soon as I was introduced to alternative materials like epoxy and EPS, San Diego is very good for that and welcoming for that. Not only the experimentation on the manufacturing side for it, but we also are really interested in it from the standpoint of milking and getting more performance out of a small wave board, and the design that can come from changing the materials and the way that you can get the ebb and flow and the dance and the stacking of new concepts together by changing the shape, changing the materials outside of the PU polyester glassing world. You can really advance some things and some concepts really quickly. And I think that's really good. You got things like Huntington. When I talked about David earlier, he was riding a board that he would ride in a lot of different kinds of surf, but Huntington was good. If it was really small and soft, he would have been on a smaller, grovelly kind of look, maybe more of a squash tail type board. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, I think when you're riding surf, making boards for crowded surf in Southern California, plus it's a little softer, you can come up with some pretty cool things.
You talked about how I mean we can go in, we are going to go into your many models because they seem to work for pretty much everywhere. But you talked about gravitating personally more towards high performance models, and you working with Kelly for the last 10 years. I'm curious, in those first 2 decades before you started working with Kelly, like what was your exposure and experience to kind of working with just team riders and were you did you have guys that were competing? Did you have guys that were from out of town? What was that like for you?
It was really cool. When it started really getting serious was probably early 2000s. Um, and the excitement that comes from shaping a board really, really precisely. So before that, it was myself and my friends that, we were trying our best to surf really well, but we weren't international high level surfers. Matt Archibald, ordered some boards. I had a connection to get to him and made him some successful boards, and the amount of refinement and the amount of attention, I'd hand shape those boards. So the attention to detail, the amount of time and the perfection, getting it just right, especially if you love the board, I'd have to reproduce the exact same thing by hand and remember what I did. And, he wouldn't always give the board back so I could have it in the room to copy it exactly. And so that high level of refinement basically is to me the most exciting thing about surfboards. And then when you can take a little pressure off of you as the shaper of it and have the design be put into the CNC.
Sure.
People talk a lot of negativity about not hand shaping, but man, when you can utilize it as a tool from the standpoint of, okay, now I know this is perfect. I've designed it from my head. I'm out surfing thinking of what I want to do. I go in, I make the down to nitty gritty details, like 30 seconds of an inch, or half a mil here and there. You're really, really able to refine it. The machine nails it. Then you get to really refine the glass job and the structural integrity of the board or the flex pattern of the board. And you can separate those components and build them all back in together so that you can get the desired outcome. It's a huge, huge tool that you have to utilize if you're going to advance the high performance surfboard. I mean, it's the most exciting part of surfing too.
Yeah, I remember back at Rip Curl Surf Center, Nev Hyman was coming around and he was pitching, I don't know if you got exposed to this, but bass. And was like, and he's like, there's going to be a bass shop. Like, it will never be more than 300 miles away from the next one. And it's like, you'll be able to get it's probably, you're right. It's probably like early 2000s that Nev came around.
Bass was like it was probably 2001. Yeah.
Yeah, probably right around then. And it was that exact argument you brought up was there where people are like, this is not shaping, like hand shape, blah, blah, blah. But now virtually every world-class shaper relies on that machine, and not because it takes the soul out of it, but they're like, this is giving my customers and my team riders and anybody that wants a board like a level of consistency that you cannot replicate unless you have something like this. And I kind of feel like the Overton window shifted on that argument a little bit. I don't know if you feel differently. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. And it's like, hey man, what do you want from me? This is a pretty difficult business here. So.
When did you first meet Kelly, and how did the surfer shaper relationship get started with him?
Well, we first met just in a friendly way. We were Petey Johnson and Jack Johnson's house on the North Shore. Their mom and dad were friends with my dad, so I got to hang out there a little bit and met Kelly there. That way, we just hanging out, watching surfing pipe a couple times, but then sitting watching pipe mostly, and having dinners and doing dishes together, kind of thing. It was real casual and very nice. And then as professionally, it got real serious when he and his partners bought Firewire in 2015.
Right.
Yeah. And that was early 2015. And in July 2015, I made him my first 3 boards for him that I attempted to make for him. And then it was 2 years before he even tried them. And that was a classic, funny Kelly story. But and then 2017 was when he realized that he wanted to keep working on refining those boards, and that was the FRK.
Yeah.
And that was when we had July 2017, right before J-Bay, right before he broke his foot.
Yeah, that's right.
Was he didn't break it on my board? Just let the record show. So he was during that time, our relationship got a lot more uninterrupted and more just
Right.
consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. And so had you been working with Firewire before Kelly bought it? He and his partners
Yeah,
bought it?
so it's
Okay.
funny you bring up Nev about bass because after bass, he got introduced to a guy named Burt Berger on the
Yeah.
west coast of Oz, and those two got together and they got some Billabong guys. Billabong had just gone public, and two guys who ended up becoming the seed money for Firewire in 2006, and Nev got together and started Firewire. They got a guy named Mark Price, who you probably know about, but
Of course,
he
yeah.
was at the time he was with Reef. They recruited him and started Firewire, and we were all at the same trade show in 2006 in San Diego, the ASR. Before after this expo in
Right.
Florida, then there was ASR a week later in San Diego, and it was like January 26th or something. We all met separately, but in the same uh, trade show.
Right.
And I met Nev and Dougal then, and they came to my shop a couple days later. And so that was all the beginning of Firewire. So I've been a part of Firewire since the very beginning. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I remember like as there's Kelly Slater, he's like the biggest name in surfing, and there was kind of the Quicksilver thing, and it was interesting, right? Because it's like you see this in a lot of sports. It's when you achieve so much competitively or just from a performance standpoint as an athlete, you kind of move into like empire building mode. And there was kind of the Quicksilver thing, which turned into the Outer Known thing. And I think there was a conversation between him and his partners in Channel Islands, and that didn't pan out. And then the
Yeah.
Firewire news. And over the last few years, it's become like a really interesting thing to watch from the outside. I think I'm not 100% on the outside. I'm not 100% on the inside, but I think the next question is one that I have, and I think a lot of people do have, is, how do you view the relationship between the Firewire piece, the Slater Designs piece, and the Mankind piece? Because there's a lot of stickers on the board sometimes, and you're like, what's the relationship there?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's a play with each other's strengths, and
Yeah.
I with my relationship with Kelly as a shaper surfer, I feel like I can anticipate what he's thinking or needing next, especially towards the end of his, competing real regularly and
Right.
consistently, on the CT. Just that was pretty. I was a fan of his since he won lowers in what was that 90, and
I'm sure.
so that was, or maybe even 89, but anyway, so I've been watching him as a surf fan, and then as a surfboard builder. We were glassing a lot of his boards for Channel Islands, so I'd see his boards, and so I was lucky enough to have a lot of like what I thought was ammunition working with him, and so I was able to anticipate a lot of that. But the the strength I can bring to that system, like we talked about earlier, with wanting to be a shaper in his with his speakers on really loud and banging out boards instead of a sales guy or whatever. I don't the Firewire piece is manufacturing the design that he and I can come up with on a level and on a scale that can sell and distribute them to people all around the world. So there's a huge demand and strength and beautiful business that can be built with a customer custom ordering a board from a shaper. But then there's also just a billion guys who just want to go to a shop and know it's going to be a high quality board,
Right.
pay a retail price for it, and say, whatever, I got it. That's how I am with cars. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to go snooping around and try to figure it out. So I'll just pay for it. I don't care. And so that's how I think there's a huge part of our surf environment, like a surf, I don't know. You come up with cool words, or atmosphere, or whatever. It's
Sure. I
demographic.
like I like
Demographic. How about
atmosphere is good. Yeah, go with that.
our demographic of surfers just want to go get a good board? And so
Yeah.
when it's Channel Islands making Al had a really cool system of models and reproducing them and getting them out to shops and the sales and distribution that I wasn't going to be good at. And so when I was able to team up with Firewire and then Slater Designs, Firewire was a machine and was so capable of
like Mark Price, when he set it all up, he was using language and talking about distribution. I didn't even know what he was talking about. And then marketing, I knew I didn't know and didn't really want to know about marketing at that time. I needed to just work. Yeah. So it was just it was a great coming together of different things. And then Kelly can come in with Slater Designs, and hopefully I round off answering your question, but he can come in with Slater Designs and go, hey, here's what I need. When we did the S boss, and he had brings in 5 boards. It was during COVID. Yeah. And I like this little section of that, and we just mixed all these boards together and came out with an S boss. And for him to have an expression and a way to get that concept that he has in his head out onto a board, and then for him as a guy who's heavily involved with his businesses to go see it in use on the Gold Coast, go see it in South Africa, go see it in California, see his boards out there. I bet you as a creator himself, it means a lot to him, just like it does for me, to have the support from people who are willing to do the sales and distribution and manufacturing and handling all the emails and all those kinds of things. So
it makes a lot of sense. And under that Slater Designs label, there's kind of 3, heat check me if I'm wrong here, actually, 3 kind of primary shapers, right? There's Daniel Thompson, Tomo, there's Woo Surfboards, and then there's yourself. Do the 3 of you interact a lot on kind of design collaboration, or is it even maybe a little competitive where it's like, I want to have I want Kelly to like my boards more than Tomo's or Woo's boards?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely more on the competitive side, but I don't think it's actually, I would say it's competitively collaborative, because if we're trying to make something that's for someone as picky as Kelly, and we have to raise our game to get that need of his met, then, and if we get the nod for the model release that works well for the overall business of Slater Designs and Firewire, then lucky us, cool win, victory for us. But it's not like, yeah, I beat you kind of a competitiveness. It's sort of like I got my game so refined and tight that I was able to get the S boss out, or the boss up out, or the DRK out. The DRK was the one that came out of the stab 10, and is a version of it that Ethan was surfing. So to get that, I feel like I had to raise my game up to get it, not beat another guy necessarily, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a ton of sense. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we return, we will wrap up our conversation with Dan Mann. Don't go anywhere. Cool. All right, welcome back to the lineup. I am Dave Prodan here with San Diego's Dan Mann. Dan, you said something interesting in that previous segment about the relationship you had with Kelly, sadly for him, but like when he got hurt, he had a lot more time on his hands, and you guys kind of like grew closer because he having experienced it on other stuff, he just needed projects to kind of sink his teeth into if he wasn't traveling around the world surfing. And there was a funny story of like, I think he after he got his foot in a boot, he was up at Surf Ranch. He was like camped out up there for like 8 weeks or something and couldn't surf. And I remember the commissioner's office at the time, Kieran Perot, Renato Hickel, Jesse Miley Dyer, Trav Logie, they got invited to go up and test the facility to see if it was like CT worthy. And I tagged along, and I'm like, I'll just pick up the scraps. This will be great. And it was great. It's amazing. But Kelly sat there in the tower all day, like watching and instructing everybody. And I'm like, this is too much pressure for me. Like I got to get him like a book or something to distract him. But I'd imagine like on the shaping side too, the way his brain works on design is like, that must've been a really productive window for you just to have access to him like that.
Yeah, it was. It's a funny thing because you talk about how intense he is and how focused he is. So that period of time, I was dealing with that, of course. And it was about then with the S-Boss board and the Boss Up. Both of those, during the development of those boards and I'll talk about fins later, but during that period, I became really clear and aware of how much he wanted to know what I thought too. So he was actually really collaborative on it. It wasn't dictatorship, this is how I need the board shaped design wise or anything, especially when I scale the FRK up to a guy my size. I weigh a lot more than him, probably, well, not a lot, but maybe 20 pounds more, but I'm taller and I surf completely differently and not nearly as well. But the scaling and the input for that is a really nice collaborative thing that I am able to see and understand the amount of trust he does put into me for developing that kind of stuff. So that part's really cool. And then during that time also, we did the endorphins and developed a whole bunch of his templates, and hearing the backstories of how the original KS for FCS, and I had a set of those made out of carbon, I think, back in
Right,
back in, like, I don't know, what was that, 2001 or 2?
The carbons were the hot ticket for sure.
Yeah.
Like those were like, we're like, new material. These are amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super light. Yeah. Yeah. So
the other ones at the time, it was like the blue and white with the dot, but they were just like the plastic composites, and it's like, you don't want those. You want the carbon ones.
Yeah, fully. That was fully it. Yeah. So that
whole,
go on, sorry. Yeah. Just and then we took that fin, and then we made like a raked out version, and then the endorphin 20. So it was a really, really productive time. I hadn't thought of it the way you put it, but it was all during that COVID-y and his broken foot time. So there was a lot we could do. It was fun.
And working with someone like Kelly, you mentioned this before, like at this point in his career, he's still competitive, of course, and still like a world-class surfer, but he doesn't have the same demands that he did when he was a full-time CT surfer. And it's something we talk about on this podcast a lot, especially with CT surfers. I'm always curious about, like, how much experimentation do you do with your equipment, like year in and year out? Like, and people fall generally into two camps. There's the one camp that's like, I ride my Ferrari board in every type of wave all the time to keep that as sharp as possible. And then there's a less common camp that's like, I'll ride anything and I'll learn from twin fins and different tech and stuff. And Kelly, even through the latter half of his full-time CT career, was definitely in that latter camp. He was really into experimentation. It was really, really interesting. I'm curious, in 2026, working with Kelly and working with the rest of your team too, like, what kind of designs Mankind's focused on? Because it does seem like to compete at the highest level, you have to have those like FRK, DRK models that are like performing at the very elite level in every kind of wave. But it does seem like you have a lot of models too that are, better for kind of everyday conditions or any kind of conditions. How do you view what to focus on as a shaper?
So it just kind of, for what I need to focus on any given time, it comes jumping in my face. Like if Kelly's around and we need to work on something, that takes all my attention, and I focus in on that. Same with David and the Brody sales, ordered a couple boards last week, and
right.
So that gets real straightforward. Luckily, with the experience and time in the saddle, I know I can anticipate what all of them are going to need, and any kind of tweak. Brody grew, so I've been making boards with him since he was like a kid. Like, I don't even know if he weighed 100 pounds when we first started making boards together. But so right now he's a grown man and just doing man churns, and he wants more or less the same board over and over. So that part is, for the most part, under control. An Ethan Ewing opportunity with Stab in the Dark comes along, and that kind of throws a wrench into my ability to focus on things. But yeah, the everyday boards, there's a lot of overlap. So if you can nail a really high performance board and you're willing to surf and put a lot of that information that you can feel and extract from the sensations of a high performance board, and you apply it to a groveler, you can scale yourself into being a really well rounded informant for my case. I'm an informant for myself on those groveler boards. And so I can go into quads. The overlap is usually with rocker, and the overlap is often with bottom contours and fin placement. So I can bring those things and slowly or go for it and radically change a shape into a groveler, into a lower, smaller wave high performance board, and bridge those gaps with the information from the high performance side. Usually for me, it's not looking at an old school fish to get a groveler. I look at the high performance boards and try to bring that down into a wide, thick skatey, high level down the line on soft, facey waves. I try to bring the high performance board into that, not the other way around for myself. Same with even longboards with Taylor Jensen. He rides a lot of my longboards. And so we're always trying to pack as much of what we know from the high performance side into the groveler side. So that's basically how I do it.
That's interesting. And with you personally, like, do you have a model at the moment or maybe one that's coming out that you've kind of been riding more often than the others?
Yeah, the Spun Honey is the most recent release from Firewire. And that board, man, that one was crazy. I got the first samples of it a while ago now. It was released a couple months ago. And so I've had samples for about 8 or 10 months. And that was like the most easy, like going from a performance board. I surfed my FRK Swallow the other day, get on that. And it's like an easy transition. It was easy to get used to right out of the gate as a new board. The learning curve was really good. So when I make a groveler or an everyday guy or bad surf board for a board that you keep in your trunk of your car that you can just always have during the summer and available for small days, that board's the latest on that. The Dominator series, Dominator Pro, Dominator 2, those are always in the rack too, and trying to always refine those. I'm working on a Dominator Swallow right now. Hopefully we can release that. Things like that. It's always kind of going. And then if we change the materials, we can change shape again, like that whole thing too.
That's really interesting. We started the podcast, we were talking about, the really like the unprecedented how big it was the year you had via both the Stab in the Darks with winning the Kelly one and really performing well in the Ethan Ewing one. You've got the greatest competitive surfer of all time, Kelly Slater, riding your boards. You've got one of the more exciting up and coming surfers like a Brody Sale. You've got David Silva, who's a world class surfer themselves. Have you or Kelly or anyone at the company talked about maybe taking a bite out of the CT surfers and saying like, yeah, we want to compete in the CT shaper rankings moving forward. Like we feel like we can build a team, then we can grow one that comes up through the ranks. Or maybe you've got CT surfers coming to you on the side and being like, hey, I saw how Ethan was surfing that board. I'd like to get a few myself.
Yeah, I'd say right now it's kind of in a transition period. Another guy I failed to mention who I've worked with a long time too is Sebastian Williams.
Sure.
And he's always kind of lurking around.
Surfer.
Unreal. Mexico. And his surfing is probably the most creative that I've seen around in a long time in this day and age in terms of rail. And the feedback I get from him, especially with his being in Puerto Escondido now, he's always nibbling around on trying to make a run for it. David's trying to requalify right now. He might. So as far as we have a stable of guys who are potential CT, and I think it would be good to kind of utilize our kind of position and resources, especially with the Stab success, to try to make a run with another CT, either guy or girl. I could do it on the side, but I think it's also another thing that if it's Slater Designs and Firewire, again, we're utilizing resources that are available to us, and it gets a lot more seamless. And especially, I wouldn't be surprised. The reason I say it's in transition and kind of a waiting and seeing, because I bet you once a little more time passes, Kelly's going to have his eye on somebody that he'll want to kind of give them, or I don't know, I guess give them the tools that he has. And put some force behind somebody who has some potential, and take that pressure valve off of the board side of being a QS guy trying to make the CT or girl. Sure. And man, if we could bestow some of the resources and the knowledge that we all have together collectively onto someone, I would be definitely into it. I'd love to go around and support them however I could, and especially on the board side of things, that'd be really a lot of fun. So yeah, it's definitely in the works, hopefully sooner rather than later. So
that's exciting. Well, you mentioned, you guys are in Costa Rica now. Like what are the rest of the Mann family's plans for the rest of 2026? Do you have any projects coming up? Like, what are you going to be doing?
Yeah. So my son was just down here. My kids are all grown. So our travel, you referenced some travels that were a long time ago.
A while back. Yeah.
My son is 20. Wow, wait a minute, 25, and my
Oh,
daughter's
wow.
23. Yeah, so they're grown and they're working. They got jobs. I'm all, God, did I teach you anything?
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
they got real jobs. No, it's cool. They're thriving. They're doing great. Yeah, so we just have a couple planned to try to like get together when I'm back up there. Local trips. My son still surfs a lot. Really good surfer, and my daughter will probably just hang and cruise around San Diego next time I'm up there. She might come down here in the fall or November time, Thanksgiving kind of time. So we'll see.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
before you go, Dan, we put a feeler out for questions at the lineup pod on Instagram. We got a lot
Okay.
back for you, but
Okay.
we've whittled them down to 3.
Okay.
First question is from @DeForest Cooper, who asks, "Is there still a place for PU poly, or is that tech outdated and rightfully being replaced by EPS?" It's a good question.
Yeah, that's a super good question. And I don't think it's outdated. I think it's just in a slot. I still make a lot of them. We do a lot of our samples and prototyping with them. PU is a great technology. It's a known factor. It works really well for the tour guys. I think, unfortunately, because they're not really paying for them, it's kind of not necessarily applicable to an everyday surfer, because the everyday surfer is like, oh my God, I just put a huge soup bowl on the bottom of my board, or I dented out my deck, after the 3 or 4 surfs. That's when it starts getting to be a technology that I think could be improved upon for the everyday guy, because you can make a board. Once you start building in some engineering with like Firewire does with sandwich construction,
Yeah.
you can make a board and separate out the weight from the durability.
Right.
And when you start doing that, you can play with the durability and the weight separately. Then you start really making a board that is more engineered and more viable from the standpoint of longevity and resale. You get a better resale opportunity out of it. But PU is definitely not dead. I doubt it'll ever be gone all the way. It's a great technology. It's very, from the standpoint of getting a perfect shape and using it that way, it's insane.
Yeah. For you personally, I mean, Firewire's got all these great technologies. They've got helium, Ibolic, ProFlex, and then they've got like that lamination, volcanic, and TimberTech. Do you personally have a preference? If you're riding, well, I'll maybe simplify the question. What tech is your spun honey in right now?
The spun honey's in helium, and that's
okay.
To me, that's a great technology, unbelievably good for weight and strength ratios.
Awesome.
It's unbelievable, yeah. So
I added a bonus question there for myself.
Good job.
Next one from Instagram is from @Hillsco, who, this is less of a question. It just says, "Let's see a new twin fin." What are your thoughts on twin fins? Because it feels like with a lot of the designs and templates these days, like they can be very performance based, as maybe opposed to ones that kind of came out in the 80s.
Yeah, I'm actually with Kevin Schultz, another guy I didn't make a lot of boards for. I didn't mention. We're working on a sort of a elongated spun honey that's a 20.
Cool.
It's going through getting glassed right now. But so my take on this is kind of, I'm gonna wear 2 different hats on it. But I rode a lot of twin fins. My first boards as a shaper were all twin fins. Mark Richardson was one of my favorite surfers, and his fin template is, I think, one of the best, if not the best, 20s. So I love that type of board. I love the feeling of getting up and having that no drag in the middle feeling of a twin. I think there's a lot there to it. I think I see a lot of boards out there that are made high performance and twin fin, and there a lot of guys are designing them, building them so that it's a really nice balance of having a high performance board be a 20, and there's a lot of speed that can come from it. Kelly loves them. Having said all that, I think ultimately we end up back in a quad situation, because overall for that type of surfer and that kind of surfing and that kind of wave, you can splice together a formula of fin combination when you utilize the quads correctly, that you and your shaper or board people can, or fin guys can tune in by having the quad. I think ultimately the most performance, the most speed and control is going to be in a quad or thruster world because 20s keep coming back and keep coming in and out of phases of popularity, but that's for a good reason. And I'm not poo-pooing them at all, but I've yet to see them achieve the level of range of performance possibilities that a quad has. So
it's a good answer.
but we'll see. We're not done.
We're not. Last question we pulled from the Instagram community is from @McPlowman. This is a good question. How do you deal with ongoing feedback, whether positive or negative, as it relates to your shaping?
So ultimately, my job, I feel like, is to treat the two the same. So if it's positive feedback or negative feedback, I try to treat them the same. Egoically, like we talked about earlier, I'm not always that great at it, but I try my hardest. And yeah, honestly, though, I think the most productive I become is when I am triggered out on a negative feedback and I have to like refine something or fix something, or if I try an experimental board and it's an absolute dog, it's like, oh God, it's very exposing and I want to go back and fix it. But yeah, there's a professional part of my brain and my way that is very analytical about it, and it's good to go. But the guy who wants to go close his room and shape and be the introvert. What's the medium guy? The extrovert.
What's a otrovert? Yeah, it's like, which to me, when someone explained it to me, I'm like, it sounds like a bit of a sociopath, but I'm like, it actually sounds like me, where I'm like, I'd rather be here, but sometimes I got to do this stuff.
Yeah, fully.
Hey,
yeah. Oh, well. So yeah, when I'm wanting to be an introvert, and I'm on that creative, artistic side of my brain, and it's I just want to go and do it and surf it myself alone and figure it out. But then when you're like when you're in relationship with high level surfers and really good people that are willing to give you the feedback and it's honest and truthful, then you're going to get better. And so I just try to look at it that way. Yeah.
Love it. Well, thanks to everyone that wrote in questions at the Lineup Pod. We're now down to our final segment, so it's time for the lightning round. We've got 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can.
Okay.
If you could only have one board setup for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
I'd have to go with thruster shortboard FRK.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Burrito or pizza?
Burrito.
Last book you read?
Last book I read is, oh man, this is very exposing, but what's the name of it? I'm forgetting. No, it's actually pretty good. Dracula.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Or Dracula. I'm thinking of, sorry, not Dracula. Freaking. It was a while ago. It was last month. So let me think. Dracula or Frankenstein. Wow.
Mary Shelley.
My brain was in a whole other phase. But yeah, Frankenstein. Sorry.
That's good. It's in the Monsterverse. Mary Shelley. Did you like it? Did you like reading it?
No, it's super good. And it's so old and written by a girl that was 19. Man, it's crazy.
Amazing. Yeah. Next question. Best surf film ever?
I think Searching for Tom Curran for me. Yeah.
Unimpeachable choice.
Yeah.
What is one wave you never have to go back to?
Never have to go back to?
Yeah.
Ooh. God. There's a lot, actually. Never have to go back to. I think for the crowd, Snapper.
Oh, it's tough.
I don't need that in my life. Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough when the crowd is at such a good wave because you just are like, man, that's like, if it's at a bad wave, you're like, it doesn't hurt as much, but yeah.
Exactly. But I think the reason I would never go back to Snapper is because if you wait and it gets big, Kira's insane. And the sweep that comes through makes the crowd way more tolerable.
Oh, well, and for a champion paddleboarder like yourself,
no
problem with that. We're all just dying in the ecosystem. You're out there thriving. If you could only surf one wave for the rest of your life, you can dream cast it, perfect conditions, just you and your friends, whatever. What is that wave?
J-Bay. Yeah.
Best person to share a lineup with?
Anyone in my family, yeah. But more often than not, the people in my family who want to surf is my son. So it probably am.
Worst person to share a lineup with?
Oh man, I think anyone who talks too much and like doesn't stop talking when a wave comes, I'd say is that person, whoever that is.
They are legion. There's more than one. That's fine. Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by
not thinking as much. Yeah.
Love it. Well, hopefully this podcast was a good stepping stone to not thinking. I had a lot of fun. Dan, man, thank you so much for coming on the lineup. Congrats on all the success this year. And man, it was a pleasure meeting you. I hope we get to catch up in person soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you, Dave. Thanks. You do a good job with this. Thanks for making it easy for me.